Can Dallas Cowboys cornerback Trevon Diggs have another big performance against Terry McLaurin here in week 4? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by Brightco Jewelry and Watch Insurance. Brightco brings you comprehensive, fast, and affordable jewelry insurance for as low as $5 per month. Check out your special offer for Locked On listeners and get covered in under 2 minutes at bright.co/locked on. That is bright.co/locked on. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, what's going on, sir?
Not much. Friday before a division game, which is always exciting. This Washington team looks to be a little bit better than the Giants, so we're going to have a little game in for us, but I'm excited to talk about it for sure.
Yeah, Washington is definitely a better team than the Giants. They are more inconsistent, though, in the good and bad ways, right? I think they can be very high variance.
High variance.
Yes,
Yep.
very, very much so. So let's go ahead and just jump into the preview. Let's start with the Cowboys offense against Washington's defense. What does Cooper Rush and the rest of the offense need to do to have success in this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think that despite the fact that this is a better opponent than we faced last week, even on the defensive side of the ball, I think that the game plan should be still the same. You know, it needs to be a balanced offense. They need to try to keep these guys off, off kilter. So I think what you really, even more so than last week, you're really trying to avoid obvious passing situations, obvious passing downs. You don't want to let this Washington team get to tee off and pin their ears back and rush the passer on a consistent basis. You know, I like the matchups. I think the offensive line matches up pretty decently against their defensive line, depending on where you're talking about. But I think that you don't want to test that in one area where you know that they may have an advantage is in pass rush. So keeping the offense balanced, keeping the defensive line specifically guessing, I think it's just going to promote better play. And then that hopefully will bring the linebackers into the play. And that's really where you want to target this Washington defense, because I think that's where they are the weakest.
So let's talk about the Cowboys offensive line against Washington's defensive line, because they are going to be without Chase Young. This is the last game that he's going to miss. Their interior defensive line is still really good. Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, those guys are problems. Would this be a game for you, Landon, where you would consider playing Jason Peters most, if not all of the game, just to kind of match up with their size?
For sure. I mean, I would play Jason Peters as much as he feels comfortable playing. You know, if I'm them, the Cowboys, I would honestly, I would have circled this game as the game that especially if you're getting Peters to play guard, that I would try to get him back in time to play at least a majority of the snaps, hopefully, if not all the snaps, simply because of what you talked about. The talent, the real talent on this defense is in its interior, as it has been for several years. Those two Alabama first-round picks, have been playing up to that billing for a while. And I think that if you can find a way to control those guys, and that's the thing, is I really do feel like if you have Peters in there, Biotis has played a lot better football this season. I think we've been talking about Zach Martin. I think that you can find those guys a little bit better than maybe most teams can. And if you can do that, I think that it's going to bode well for the Cowboys' offensive success overall.
All right, let's talk about Washington's secondary, because they've been a little bit up and down. Now, they didn't have William Jackson last week. He is expected to play this week. They still have Fuller. He's been a little bit up and down, but Washington actually leads the NFL in playing cover one, which means you should be able to make plays down the field, provided you have the time to throw the ball. Do you think the Cowboys will be able to make enough chunk plays in the passing game in order to have success?
Well, this is one of those games where, I think the big difference between the Giants the Commanders I will be kind of made up for on the Cowboys side with the additions of Gallup and Schultz, right? Because I think having Gallup back, even if he's not full Michael Gallup, it just puts a threat of someone who can stretch the field a little bit, and I think someone who can beat one-on-one coverage down the field. So now you suddenly have a couple of guys who you feel like can beat their man coverage, who can give you opportunities to kind of either open things up down the field or beat one-on-one coverage. And I think if the Cowboys are able to maintain a healthy pocket for Cooper Rush, there is hay to be made on the back end of this defense. I mean, they have good guys who can play cover one pretty well. And I do, generally like some of the safety play that they have. Cameron Curl.
Yep.
I stumble over saying his name every time. Cameron Curl is a guy that's kind of been a revelation for them these last few seasons. He's played a lot better football this year, but I don't know that he's necessarily someone that you're going to be afraid to throw the ball down the field on. He's more of a kind of a run defender type player. So I think the
enforcer, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I do think that the Cowboys can make hay against this secondary. But again, it's going to be about finding protections. They got to find ways to win early with some of this stuff and to kind of get passes going quickly. And if everything starts to get tight, they're going to have to find a way to either through max protect or something else to find time for Cooper Rush to get the ball, to deliver the ball down the field, because I do think there will be opportunities for guys like Gallup, for CeeDee Lamb, maybe even Noah Brown.
Almost all of Cooper Rush's big plays so far as a Cowboys starting quarterback have come off play action, right? Sucking the linebackers in, making throws across the middle of the field. That's one area where Washington's linebackers really struggle. Like Jermaine Davis and Cole Holcomb, they want to get downhill and they want to hit you and they want to show their athleticism. But if you can use some play action, get CeeDee Lamb, Noah Brown on some crossing routes, especially against single high coverage, you should be able to create some big plays. I'm not looking for the Cowboys offense to all of a sudden score 35 points, but if they can score 21, 23 points and kind of control the clock and run the ball and avoid third longs, I think they could have a moderate amount of success.
Yeah, they're not going to see any kind of exotic looks or anything. This is not like playing Wink Martindale or some of these other defensive coordinators, Todd Bowles.
Yeah, Jack Del Rio's not that defensive coordinator.
Jack Del Rio is about as basic as you get. He's basically miracle bread. He's so white bread. So he's going to put out their very basic flavors of cover 3, cover 1. The Cowboys should have tons of schematic answers there. It's just about executing to the point where they can, make them pay for kind of playing basic coverage against the Cowboys.
Really trying to refrain from a Jack Del Rio dust up in the middle of the field.
Let's. I'll do a 20-minute diatribe on Jack Del Rio and how terrible he is as a defensive coordinator if you want me to.
No,
I just thought I'd hint at it and then we can move on.
That's fine. Let's. So many different things we could do there. Let's take a break so we can talk about the Cowboys defense. But also want to tell you guys about Brightco. I've told this story now a number of times, but I had a friend went to go propose to his then girlfriend up on the Ferris wheel, dropped the engagement ring, and you don't want to be that guy. You certainly don't want to be splattered all over the internet. The guys at Brightco Jewelry Insurance will make sure that you get a replacement for the full value of that ring, no matter if it's lost, stolen, dropped, or you just can't figure out what happened to it. Go to bright.co/locked-on. It's the fastest, easiest, and cheapest way to cover your butt with the best jewelry insurance in the business. These guys at Brightco are absolute geniuses. They've made buying insurance for your engagement ring, your watch, or whatever just so easy that you can get covered in 2 minutes on your cell phone. You won't find a better deal on great coverage that's super affordable. Bright.co/locked-on. We all hate buying insurance and the entire process, but Brightco has made it so easy. For $5 a month, you can get totally comprehensive coverage, and it won't take you more than 2 minutes on your cell phone. Check it out at bright.co/locked-on. All right, Landon, let's talk about Carson Wentz.
Carson Wentz is going to need some Brightco insurance because I'm pretty sure that Micah Parsons is going to force his wedding ring down his throat at some point during this game.
Yes, it's going to be a tough. Well, let's go ahead and talk about Parsons. I thought Parsons, even though he was a little sick last week, was still phenomenal. Like he was still all over the field.
Yeah.
Do you expect him to be fully healthy this game?
Oh yeah, yeah, I expect him to have a big day too against these offensive tackles. They're not going to be any match for what he wants to do. Cosme is a guy that we watched coming out of Texas, right? He was a Texas guy.
Mm-hmm. Their tackles are good though. Like that's of their offensive line. Their tackles are certainly the strength
of their offensive line. Sure,
yes.
I'll go with that, but they're not a strength overall. Leno is not. Charles Leno is a guy who's been around the league for a long time. He's been serviceable at certain points for sure. This is way above his skill grade. He's not going to be neither of these guys are going to be able to handle Parsons one-on-one. They're going to have to direct attention to the Cowboys pass rush in order to kind of slow it down. I feel
we should also mention that Leno, I believe he missed some time last week.
He did.
He also missed some practice time this week with a back injury. When Leno and Cosme are healthy, I think they are a fine bookend tackle situation. Their problem is the interior of their offensive line, and it doesn't sound great. So their two guards are not good. Andrew Norwell, who has been kind of washed for a couple of years now, he's starting at left guard. They are down to their third string center this week because their starter, Wes Schweitzer, I believe, he's out with
Schweitzer.
Schweitzer. He's out with a concussion. So that means Nick Martin, yes, Zach Martin's brother, is going to start at center in this game. This is where Dallas needs to dominate. I wouldn't be surprised if Dan Quinn tries to isolate Parsons against some of these guards.
How could you, Nick Martin? How could you?
Well, he's just trying to find a team at this point.
Yeah, that's fair. I think, yeah. I mean, it's an ugly matchup for Washington on the offensive line versus our defensive line. That's the one thing that I feel like is kind of similar to the Giants, except I would say that I think that the Giants tackle situation, well, Andrew Thomas is better than these two tackles as far as I'm concerned,
yes,
but not Evan Neal at this point. So
correct, and that's the hard part, right? I think Evan Neal is by far the worst of those, but
I do think that you're not, as opposed to last week. I think you're going to be able to attack either side of this offensive line, whereas last week you were kind of not avoiding Andrew Thomas by any stretch of the imagination, but I mean, he was definitely the less.
There was a clear weak link that the Giants had, right?
And then interior wise, I mean, look, you've seen a lot of improved play and great play from Oso Digizua this season. The Cowboys have done a really good job with twists and stunts of attacking the middle of offensive lines and getting. Whether it's having to, exchange on a twist and making sure that you're keeping track, or it's simply kind of peppering the A gaps with linebackers and blitzes. I think the Cowboys have found ways to attack, all the way from A to the outside gaps. So I think that that's what you're going to see a lot of, especially obviously with Carson Wentz. And, everyone who's listened to this show for a while knows how we feel and how what the truth is about Carson Wentz at this point, that if you get pressure on him, which, you will, because he will hold the ball until you show up for him. You need to make sure to swipe at the ball because he will let go of the football. He'll throw it into your guy's hands. He'll drop the football. This is an opportunity where the Cowboys defense, maybe even more so than Daniel Jones, I think, because, Jones has had fumbling issues as well. But I think Carson Wentz is a guy who is going to let you hit him. And
he's just not as athletic as Jones is either.
No,
right? Like
certainly not that.
Jones could step up in the pocket. He could scramble out to his right and make plays. Wentz used to be able to do that pre-knee injury, but he's just not that guy anymore.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like we talked about last week. What was the Giants' offense last week? It was running the football randomly and getting some random chunk plays, or it was Daniel Jones running out of the front of the pocket in the pass rush, and then either getting penalty yards or just getting a nice chunk gain because there was no one there. I can't imagine that Wentz is going to hurt the Cowboys the way that he did. So it's interesting, I mean, as we talk through this. It's very clear that this Washington team is a better team than the Giants.
Yes.
But I do still wonder how they're going to consistently kind of hurt you if they can't find consistency at their quarterback position, because all their skill is on the outside, and that's where I get worried. Right, McLaurin, Samuel, Dotson. That's where I have concerns. But how is Wentz going to consistently deliver the ball to those guys? In a way that actually gets.
He's not. He's not, and actually. The Jacksonville game in week 1 is a perfect example. They were awful at sustaining drives. Like this is just not an offense with their interior offensive line, with their quarterback. And now, unfortunately, without Brian Robinson, probably their best pure runner that can sustain drives. So what they rely on is massive chunk plays on the offense, right? Terry McLaurin making plays down the field. Their rookie Jahan Dotson making incredible catches. To me, landing this game is as simple as if the Cowboys get Washington in the 3rd and 7 or longer, they're going to win. Like I'm not sure there's a defense in the NFL right now I trust more on 3rd and long than the Cowboys. It's just, can Dallas get there? Can they avoid giving up, the home run ball early in the game that puts Washington up? If the answer is yes, they're going to be just fine on defense.
It would be really, really great if Jaron Kearse was able to find his way back into this game.
Oh, yeah.
Simply because I think, what you're talking about, the key to that gets forgotten and trying to prevent big plays is you can put, cover 2 shell up at the top. You can play quarters. You can keep it all in front of you. But if you can't rally to tackle and you can't come downhill and make a tackle, short of the sticks, they can nickel and dime you to death. So the Cowboys need to make sure that if they're going to kind of keep it all in front of them, kind of play back a little bit, they need to make sure that when they're pulling the trigger to come downhill to make the tackle one-on-one with the guys that are getting the ball, they are limiting yak to 0, right? Or at least knocking the guy off his plane enough that somebody else can come in and make the follow-up tackle. That's where I think having Kearse as opposed to just Donovan Wilson, who, again, this is not a knock on Donovan Wilson because we understand what his game is, right? He's the Carson Wentz of safeties, where it's like it's boom or bust with him, right? But having a steady, reliable tackling presence like Kearse, I think will really help the game plan, simply because A, he can cover a tight end, which is something else I think you're going to need in this game, and B, that ability to be a rangy tackler short of the sticks will help get you into those 3rd and long situations where you clearly have a huge advantage.
Now, one of the players or one of the matchups that I'm most looking forward to seeing is Trevon Diggs against Terry McLaurin, because we've seen before. This is a matchup that Diggs has kind of historically won, right? Like he was fantastic last year against McLaurin. He had multiple interceptions. Do you have the confidence that he can do it again?
I think it's a tough matchup. I mean, I think if you go back even further than that, McLaurin had Diggs's number early in this matchup when Diggs was a rookie. But obviously Diggs has played a lot better football since then. And yes, these last 2 matchups, it's been all Diggs. I think that, yes, I do think that Diggs will have a positive game against McLaurin. Look, McLaurin's going to get he's going to probably catch some passes. He's the guy that they're targeting the most, I would say. Samuel is more the guy that's the movable chess piece that they'll kind of try to get interesting matchups. So how they cover him will be interesting, to say the least. Yep. But I think as far as the Diggs McLaurin situation goes, it's a very good matchup for both sides. They're pretty even. I like what we've seen from Diggs these last 2 times he's played him. I expect him to follow McLaurin like he has these last few times. And I expect him to have some success. I mean, simply, if only because I trust the Cowboys defensive line to get to Wentz and force bad throws before McLaurin's able to kind of get to some deeper routes or down the field to really, really hurt the Cowboys.
Just some stats really quickly of the Diggs McLaurin matchup. Just last year, 10 targets for McLaurin, 2 receptions for 67 yards. He had 1 long touchdown. That was pretty incredible. Diggs did have an interception, 6 pass deflections by Trevon Diggs. If he can slow down McLaurin and just not give up that big play down the field, really wonder how Washington's going to be able to create chunk plays. I know Curtis Samuel's healthy and Dotson has made plays, but McLaurin is really their game breaker. That's the guy that they need to have a monster performance in order to put up 23, 24 points against Dallas.
Yeah, big plays might happen. I mean, that's the thing. Yep. What you got to avoid is consistently giving up chunk plays to allow them to continue to drive the football down the field.
Yes.
I imagine it to be a very similar game plan defensively than what you've seen previously, right? Where the Cowboys play a little bit looser until they get to their side of the 50-yard line. And then once they've got a little bit more condensed space, they start working a little bit further down and they start challenging you a little bit more. So I would just look for that kind of similar vibe for the defense this week as well.
just really quickly before we move on, this is another game that the defense is going to have to win for them. Like, just like we said against the Bengals and just like we said against the Giants, they need to have like an awesome first half where they only give up 6 points or 3 points like they did last week against the Giants. They can allow the offense to kind of find their rhythm and figure some things out. If they give up, let's say they give up a first quarter touchdown and they give up 13 points in the first half, that's how Dallas loses a game like this where they're at home and they're favored. The defense has to bail them out once again.
Yeah, and I think that can happen a couple different ways, right? Like you talked about, it's whether it's getting them off the field consistently in the first half, or starting to create turnovers in the second half. I think those are
we really haven't seen a ton of yet. They have one against Brady, right? And they had one interception against Diggs, and that's all the turnovers they've had so far.
So regression may be reversing course at this point. We may be getting a positive regression at some point, but yeah, look, I think this is an offense that is that will give the ball away. Whether it's Wentz being sack fumbled or throwing it when he definitely should not be throwing it, or fumbles. I just think that this is an offense that has given up the ball at different times throughout, and has, like I said, has a quarterback who has made a career at different points of giving the ball away at times. So make him feel comfortable. Make him comfortable with what he's used to doing, and allow him the opportunity to give you the football back. Whether that's, in putting them in disadvantageous third downs and then getting off the field, or putting them in disadvantageous third downs and taking the ball from him. Either one works. And then I think the other thing too is that would be really important is if they could find a way, instead of doing the kind of normal, hey, wait till they get across the 50 and kind of really cut it down. If they are able to force them to punt on the other side, on their own side of the field, that's when you can start inviting in guys like Turpin and the special teams unit to really help help you as well, because that's more complimentary football that you need help.
Remember the second game last year against Washington and Dallas, the same exact thing happened, right? They were able to get some 3 downs. They blocked a punt. They had some explosive plays on offense, and all of a sudden that game was 35-3 or whatever it was by the third quarter. It's not going to be like that because your offense just isn't as explosive without Dak Prescott and everybody else. But this is a team that they'll give you chances to kind of get up on them early. Hope the Cowboys take advantage of it. One more thing on the defense. Washington has the oldest interior offensive line in the NFL. Nick Martin is actually their youngest interior guy. I think he's 29 and a half years old. Trey Turner, I thought, was washed up 2 years ago when he was on Carolina. They have to dominate that matchup. Like, this is a game Neville Gallimore, Oso Digizua, and Tristan Hill all need to play well. And I don't think Tristan Hill played well last week. Gallimore still working himself into shape, I think, a little bit. They need to win.
Yeah, absolutely. And they should win. And if they can't, if Washington finds a way to start running the football consistently with the way that the offensive line is constructed and with the running backs they have, Cowboys are going to be in trouble. What they really can't do is keep this Washington offense, give the Washington offense the ability to be balanced the entire game. They have got to find a way to stop the run early, to force them to try to pass to win, just to get yourself in the spots that you need to get the best advantage that you have on defense. So definitely need to win that interior matchup, simply to kind of start the dominoes of, getting them into third and long, and then that's where you have the chance to really hurt them.
All right, let's make some predictions for this week 4 game. Again, in Dallas, 1 p.m. Eastern time start. Cowboys 3-point favorites according to Bet Online. Landon, who do you think is going to win this game and why?
I still got the Cowboys. I do think that this is a Giants, better team than the Giants, like we mentioned, but you're playing at home. I actually think the matchups still really favor you, despite the fact that this is a more talented team. It's a styles make fights sorts of situation, and I think this is a bad style for the Washington team to be facing, to be honest. But I don't think it's going to be a huge high-scoring game. I don't think it's going to be a runaway game for either team. I still expect it to be close in the fourth quarter. I'm going to pick a very similar score to what the Cowboys had last week, except I'm going to go with 21-14 Cowboys. Okay. I think, late touchdown in the probably middle of the fourth quarter, and then run the ball down to get the game killed.
So I think before the season, you and I predicted that the Cowboys would be 2-2 coming out of the first month of the season. And we were
Sounds right.
hoping for 3-1, but 2-2 seemed pretty
Reasonable.
realistic given
Yeah.
their schedule, right? And I
Absolutely.
kind of feel like that's what they'll probably be. Eventually, teams are going to catch up to Cooper Rush a little bit. He's going to have a game where he has a couple turnovers. It hasn't happened yet. There's been chances. I just wonder off a short week if this isn't the game, but that happens. We saw Dak. Dak struggled in the first Washington game last year. Like, he did not play well. He threw a pick six late in the game that almost allowed Washington to steal that one. Their defense can be challenging at times because they are pretty fast at the second level. I think this is a game where Washington maybe gets up a score early and the Cowboys are just never able to take over the lead. So I'll take Washington 23-17 in tradition of me never picking the Cowboys to win.
That seems as reasonable as any of your other picks.
I just want to make sure we're consistent, if nothing else, in this podcast, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're consistent if Carson Wentz never is.
It's an NFC East game. I expect it to be close though throughout. Like, it's going to be hard fought. It's going to be relying on some probably weird bounces and some special teams errors, but should be a fun one. Man, it's great to have NFC East games that feel like they matter again, right? Like, this is a lot of fun.
Even if we have to stoop down to Washington's level to make it a close game by having our starting quarterback hurt, it's still a little bit fun.
Can I just say this, just in case it does happen? If the Cowboys get to 3-1, even beating this Washington team, I don't even care how it looks. If it's 20-19 and it's as ugly as it gets, they are sitting extremely well after playing two of the toughest opponents, getting a little bit healthier. I think you have to be really excited if this team can just find a way to scratch and claw to a 3-1 start.
I mean, this is an improving team each week because it's young. It's the plan that we had talked about before the season is ongoing. It's working. The problem is that Dak's not here, right? Yeah. So, but Dak will be back. He's coming back. He's getting closer each week. If this team can continue to improve with its young players, continue to get the experience you need, this will be a big week for working Michael Gallup back into the offense, back into things. Peters will continue to play more and more snaps. You have a team that's improving, that's getting better week to week. And then on top of that, you're going to add Dak Prescott into this, and that will really finally kick this thing into full gear. So there's lots of opportunity for everything that the Cowboys wanted at the beginning season to still happen at this point.
By the way, Jerry Jones and the Cowboys will never say it, but if Dallas wins this game, there's just not going to be the urgency to push Dak back on the field. And I know they're saying he's going to play when he's ready, but hey, if you're 3-1, okay, you play Los Angeles next week against the Rams and you lose. It's not a big deal.
Well, right? it takes the desperation out of the decision, right?
Yeah,
like suddenly you don't need to feel like, okay, we got to rush Dak back because our season's slipping away. If it's on a steady course and you're still winning football games, make sure Dak is healthy so that he can take over for that last half of the game. You're getting good play out of Cooper Rush, as good as you can expect from your backup quarterback. Take advantage of that, and if that means giving Dak another week to be healthy and feel comfortable
and have a full week of practice, right, with no limitations. And that's really what I want. I'd love the team, the Cowboys, to have enough wins stacked up where, hey, we're okay giving Dak 3 full weeks of practice, so that way when he comes back in, he's 100% ready to go and there's no limitations at all.
I was just going to say, there is going to come a week where Dak's situation is going to be very iffy, where it's like, okay, yeah, he can grip the ball.
He could try to play this week.
He can throw it. And if Cooper Rush was playing bad football, that would have definitely been the week that Dak goes in there. And there's a very high chance that it looks terrible. Dak doesn't quite get isn't quite back the way he wants. He could re-injure it, or he could just look awful and feel terrible about how he's playing after the game. Cooper Rush's ability to win these games and kind of keep the Cowboys in it means that you don't have to rush Dak back that week. You can take the extra week like you did with Michael Gallup. Take the extra week and really be sure that he's healthy before bringing him back. And that ultimately will be best for what the Cowboys need long-term.
All right. That is it for today's show. Thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. Now make your second listen, the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. All the same places that you can download the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Check us out over on YouTube. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Cowboys. You can follow Landon at McCool BCB. I am at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy the game. We'll see you guys right back here late Sunday night, early Monday morning. See you next time.